welcome to this meeting of Inverclyde Council's Education and Communities Committee. This meeting has been held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations in Data Protection Act 2019. We broadcast and record our Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during this process will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meetings protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to this meeting. So with that in hand, can I pass over to Diane for apologies and declarations of interest and roll call?
We have apologies from Councillor Armstrong with Councillor Reynolds substituting, Councillor Brennan with Councillor McCormick substituting, Councillor Law and Paul McEwen. Convener will now move to an attendance roll call before proceeding to the declarations of interest. Can the following members please indicate if they're present at the meeting either in person or remotely? Councillor Clockerty.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Daisley.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCormick.
Present remotely.
Councillor Maguire.
Present remotely.
Councillor McVeigh.
In chambers.
Councillor Moran.
In the chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present chamber.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Present in the chamber.
Reverend David Burt. Mr Doherty put in his apologies. Reverend Donaldson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Can I just thank you very much for coming along today? I'm sure you are aware it's a one-item agenda, and it's a provision of secondary Gaelic education in Inverclyde, and I'll ask Michael to introduce the paper. Michael.
Through you, Convener, and my thanks to you all for making the effort to come along this afternoon for this special agenda item. So this is a report to committee on the provision of secondary Gaelic education in Inverclyde, and as you'll see from section 1, there's 3 purposes to the report. This is us coming back to you just over a year after the service was given a remit from committee to establish an advisory group and look into an options appraisal, if you like, for the future of secondary Gaelic within Inverclyde. Secondly, to share that outcome with you, and also to just note that there is a degree of uncertainty in this as we go forward, given the current cohort of primary 7 pupils at 1.4. And so we'd also be seeking delegated power to the Corporate Director in case we do need to explore the demand for Gaelic secondary education in August of 23. Turn to section 3, the background and context, to give you as brief an overview as I can give you, although obviously there's a lot of information in the report and the attached documentation. We know that we have a very strong culture and provision for Gaelic education at Windhill Primary School, and without reaching any confidence, I had the pleasure of being in Windhill last week doing a 3-day review of the school, and I concur that that continues to be the case, a very high standard, even external validation from somebody from Gaelic, from another local authority attending. The story behind, or the chronology behind this situation is, as you probably know, at 3.2, during the academic year 2021, we did have a number of pupils who had put places requests at Glasgow Gaelic School. These were initially turned down, although they were granted. And this prompted a conversation and the need to reflect on the future of Gaelic education in Inverclyde, which is what we were tasked to do by committee and in the establishment of a advisory group which we have set up. Whilst there is no statutory requirement for the local authority to provide secondary Gaelic education, the service is keen to continue the Gaelic education provision that we have at Windhill, and currently there is no provision for secondary education in Gaelic in the authority. So we agreed through committee in January 22 at 3.5 that the service would undertake an options appraisal process and that the Gaelic advisory group would be established to take that forward and report back to committee, which is why we're here today. So at section 4, the advisory group was established around May time 2022, and later on in the documentation there is the membership of that group is outlined for you, but I have chaired that group. And we've also, alongside my colleague Elaine McEwen, Education Officer, who's just been it for Gaelic, who's on the call. And as part of that group, we also had membership from representation from the Director of Education Board in Gaelic. We also had representation from the CLD service in Inverclyde, and we also had 2 parent representatives from the parent, which is the People Council, Gaelic People Council, if you like, from Windhill. The options appraisal that we undertook looked at 4 options, and Bord na Gaelic funded that options appraisal for us. And we went out to ask for an external consultant to lead that, and the options appraisal in full is Appendix 1. We worked in close partnership with Appendix 1. Appendix 1 is the options appraisal in full, Councillor Wilson. So the options appraisal looked at 4 key options agreed by the advisory group. Standalone Gaelic secondary school, co-located Gaelic secondary school, i.e. Finding space within potentially the grounds of an existing school and building something, establishing something. The third option being a joint provision arrangement with another local authority, and finally a Gaelic provision within a secondary school within Inverclyde Council. A lot of work was done to take each option, benchmark that with links and intelligence gathering, data gathering with other local authorities, and also be mindful of compliance with legislation, statutory guidance, etc. A lot of work was done on costing, particularly the building of, for example, standalone Gaelic secondary school. And over a series of meetings, once we had the options appraisal back to us, the consultant continued to work with us and explain and explore questions that the advisory group had. And we eventually reached a consensus position earlier in this calendar year that overall, on balance, the advisory group felt, and you'll see at 6.1, I think, it is noted that the recommendations coming from the advisory group to committee, that at 4.4, there were significant benefits and fewer risks associated with option 4, and this would be one that the advisory group officers would recommend is taken forward, and that is a Gaelic provision within a secondary school, namely Inverclyde Academy within Inverclyde Council. At section 4.4 to 4.6, there's some further information there about not a lot of detailed information. I have to say there's more in the options appraisal, but a bit more information about why, on balance, we felt that would be the best way to start, I suppose, a secondary provision. Given the numbers that we have coming out of in Windhill, we only have currently this year 2 primary 7s. I think, and in the P6 class we have got 6 primary 6 children. And so the advisory group felt that starting a GME provision in Inverclyde Academy, which is obviously the catchment school for Windhill, was the best option for us. And to be clear, we would not be offering the advisory group. We're very clear about this, and we've had meetings with parents about this. We are not establishing this providing full-time immersive education in Gaelic, as children do experience in a standalone school such as the Glasgow Gaelic School. That is not possible. However, what we are proposing to put in place is commensurate and in line with provision that you can find in many local authorities within the West Scotland and across Scotland, I have to say, in that children will study some of their education, including the learning of language Gaelic and other subjects in Gaelic, and some of their education will be taught in English. But the link within Inverclyde Academy, keeping the link within the cluster, allows the team at Windhill to support the establishment of Gaelic education at Inverclyde Academy. There's huge capacity there in the leadership team to do so, and a real willingness and desire to do so, as well as a willingness and desire from the team at Inverclyde Academy to develop Gaelic education at the school. If the committee agrees at 4.5 that secondary Gaelic provision is to be created in Inverclyde, this would start in the academic year 24-25, and so officers will be bringing back a proposal for statutory consultation to establish that provision. However, as noted at the beginning of the report in section 1, there may be a need to put something in place for pupils in a current P7 at Windhill, which is why we've got one of the recommendations within the report. There are anticipated initial costs. Obviously, a lot of this is subject to recruitment, and the main cost will be around staffing. However, as you possibly know, there is the Gaelic specific grant that we access and draw down on an annual basis, and initially in establishing provision, we would be given some of the funding for staffing, that what we would be asked to do is over time that full cost will be met within our core budget. So lastly, at 4.6, the initial proposal would be to establish the provision, set statutory consultation, recruit to that provision, and over time build that provision as more children come through from Windhill. The hope being that parents will choose to take up that offer and work with us to develop it. And obviously, as numbers grow, the provision would need to grow, and potentially further staffing would need to be employed to meet the level of need. Lastly, what we've said at 4.7 is, as a service, we are keen to continue to work with partners across the West Partnership to both share our good practice, to learn from other good practice, to network with other local authorities who are just establishing now primary provision, and continue to be open to explore opportunities to work together should there be the need to meet any increasing demand in the future. So the recommendations finally from the report, there are two, asking the Education Committee approve the officers to develop a proposal for establishing the offer of Gaelic secondary education for the academic year beginning August 24 within Inverclyde Academy, and bring the final proposal for statutory consultation back to Education Committee. And secondly, to approve delegated powers to the Corporate Director, Education Committees and Organisational Development to explore potential provision for Gaelic secondary education and identify a resource within the academic year 23-24, actioning this if there is a demand for that provision. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Michael. I'll open up the questions. I'll bring Elizabeth in first and then James. Elizabeth.
I've got a few questions, if that's all right. I'll just outline them and see how you want to deal with them. Just would be really useful to know where we are in terms of this application request situation for this year to Glasgow, the Glasgow Gaelic School, just in terms of exactly where we are as of today for the kids who are transitioning at this point. Second question is more, we've had a long journey with the parents about the whole issue of developing this type of service, and this seems to mark a sea change in where the parents are, and I'm just I'm not privy to those conversations. There's been a steering group, obviously, which have kind of moved things along, and I'm just wondering if we can get a bit more detail about that journey and how we can have assurances that the parents are are now in a different place from where they were 18 months ago. The third kind of question I've got is about when we agree what we agree today, are we agreeing the start of a journey, or are we agreeing an end game? And that's it. This is you know, that of the 4 options that have been presented, that's the one that we're now opting for, or is it that's the one that we're opting for at present, with the other options being open if things develop in the future? I do have a question about funding. Obviously, we put in applications for funding for our Gaelic provision every year, and I don't think we get what we ask for. So if we are now going to be adding an element to our funding ask, how assured are we that that funding will be available, and what are our plans for sustaining that? And really just the kind of scope of out of authority placements, if we are building a provision in Inverclyde that could be helpful for people in Renfrewshire, North Ayrshire, or Galen Butte, for example, then I'd like to know that we are kind of building that into our planning for development. Those are the areas that I've got.
Okay, Michael, you can.
Okay, through the convener, taking notes. So the first question that placed request is a difficult one to answer because I'm just aware of data protection we are talking about. I'm not sure that I'm in a position to confirm with you what individual parents are intending to do, but historically what I could say is that parents have put place requests in to the Glasgow Gaelic School, and as I've indicated there, it was 2 years ago that it was the first time that they had initially been declined, although they then were granted. Last year's place requests were granted. So I'm not at liberty to go into the details of individual situations.
If I could come in just with details of the potential timeline. So place requests have to be confirmed by end of April. But as you know, parents have the right to appeal. So if the place is granted, then it would finish there. Or if it's not granted, then the parents could appeal, and that can go to June. So that's what we would typically see. So either the place is granted or isn't granted, and then the parents have the option for the appeal process. And that's why we've had to take that into account, because at this point in time we simply can't look for definite.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. The second question about the parents, I think obviously the 2 parents that have been on the advisory group are part of the parents, so there's been a clear route for communication back from the advisory group through those parents to the wider common parent group, which has included us in the minutes of meetings which have been shared transparently. I think the parents who have represented the parent body have definitely, through this process, developed an understanding in respect of financial side of the first option, for example, which I think historically we're all aware was something that parents were keen to see. And I think through that process of looking at information, the consultants' feedback, the work that we've done collectively as a group, we've come to an understanding that the best place to start, and which is maybe me now tipping into your last question, is with this offer. Bearing in mind, for example, the start, if you go back in time, of the Glasgow Gaelic School itself, it was once a GRE provision in a secondary school south of Glasgow that grew to then mean it was there for a school. And we've had those conversations. I have met, along with Elaine, the P6 group of parents. I mean, certainly they have questions, they have concerns, they recognise the challenges that we face in taking this forward. We've had very open conversations with them about recruitment, the challenges of recruitment in Gaelic teachers. And so I think there's maybe just a better collective understanding of what the challenges are and what the options are. And certainly from within the common parent representatives that we've worked with, an agreement that this is where we need to start. And as I've said, I think it's 6.1, this is the recommendation of that advisory group that includes those parents. Is this the start of a journey? And I think it's the start of a journey. I think this is something that potentially could grow, potentially, and that's what we've said at 4.7. I think we've indicated that there, that we would need to see how this developed over time. And I think there's a degree, it's a leap of faith, you know, it's not necessarily fully immersive Gaelic education. At this point in time, we do not have the resource capacity to deliver that. But we're very keen to be solution focused as to how we could evolve and develop that offer over time as more young people potentially become involved. And in terms of the funding, obviously we're looking to, we know that we have to build in the human resource for this into our budget, but we will have capital grant resource coming in, which will dissipate over time. But that's something that the service is well used to in respect of Windhill. And in terms of establishing the provision at Inverclyde Academy, the actual capital costs are pretty limited. It's about really a classroom at the start, potentially moving to a second classroom as it potentially grows. But that's something we'd always keep under review.
Elizabeth, I'll stay with you.
Just the wee final question about opening this out to other areas.
So, sorry,
Building
thank
that
you.
into plan.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, obviously, we have experience of parents putting place requests from mainly from Renfrewshire to Windhill, so that may well continue to be the case. And again, I suppose it's around if a parent's putting a placing request in, it's a placing request from any other placing request, and we just follow that process through and monitor the number of pupils that we have at any one time within the provision.
Can I just come back
Yep.
on that one? It's just more kind of proactively letting other people know that this is new provision that's available for them, that it's a different offer, but an emerging offer as an alternative to taking a chance with Glasgow every year.
I mean, certainly through you, if this were to be established, we already have some work undergoing, already got some work that we're undertaking with the support of the board to do some PR and communication around Gaelic education as it stands. And certainly, if this were something that we were to agree to, then this would fall under that same communication strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
I'll bring James in and then Natasha. James?
Thanks, Convener. I've got two questions. First one is, have any children ever been denied a placement request in Glasgow Gaelic School? We'll just take that first.
Yeah.
So through you, Convener, so I think as I explained in the preamble, Councillor Daisley, we had 2 years ago, I think it was, 4 primary 7 children at Windhill. One of them was a sibling, so they got a place, and the other 3 all at that point had, at the time that Ruth explained in April, had the place request denied. However, there's always what I call the churn, and through the churn, places became available, and in the ranking order that Glasgow Council managed that, they got places at the school. And since then, last year, there have been, the numbers again were quite low, and as far as I'm aware, those children got into a place request. But Glasgow obviously indicating that their numbers are rising through primary into secondary, and I think, over time, the chances of getting into Glasgow from other authorities is decreasing. But at the moment, certainly, and I don't know how it will pan out this year, as Ruth says, we have to wait and see till Glasgow make the decisions.
Okay.
James?
Just one more, if I can, please. Just looking at the options appraisal on page 19, 4.3.5, headed risks. So the first line of that paragraph is the most significant risk is the availability of suitably qualified teachers who are fluent in Gaelic to deliver the curriculum. So how realistic do you think it is that we're going to have a suitably qualified teacher in place for 23-24 if we need one?
So through you, Convener, I don't have a crystal ball, and certainly you would want, that would be our absolute aim to be to recruit, to host. We have talked to parents about what potentially could be done in the interim as we continue. Say we weren't able to do that, what could we do to mitigate that risk? I mean, we've talked through, because at the start it would be S1 pupils that would be within the provision, and there's the possibility of drawing on the primary capacity we have to use that capacity to teach certainly Gaelic language, potentially Gaelic and some other subjects. from Winhill in partnership with Inverclyde Academy, in the hope that we will be able to find eventually a Gaelic teacher. There are other options, for example, the huge resource that is East Royal, the online school, but nothing, as we know from our experience, replaces face-to-face. So we have spoken about, Kate's asked that very same question of us. But I think our absolute desire is to establish this and move it on, and there are other subjects and challenges in the system to recruit to, that are not Gaelic, and across the country there are particular secondary subjects that are quite challenging to recruit to. So schools and local authorities have to be creative then in how we mitigate that. But I think we've got to go aiming to attract somebody to this fantastic opportunity to come and work with us here in Inverclyde, set out our vision for this. I hope that somebody out there wants to come and do that. Certainly, we've got quite an established team of Gaelic teachers at Winhill, and I think that's another advantage we have, is selling that bond and that link with them. That they're not going to be on their own. That there's a team that they can work with, to moderate with, to learn from and evolve what that transitional curriculum piece that's in here from Winhill.
James?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Natasha, can we bring you in next, and then David? Natasha.
Yep, just first of all, just want to say thank you to the group, the parents, the officers, everybody who's kind of been involved in this. It's quite an interesting read through the report and the apprentices, so thank you everybody for that. I've already had a couple more questions answered, so I'll just go through the ones that haven't been answered so far. So one of my questions was, out of our primary 7 cohort each year, roughly, what percentage of pupils actually transition to the Gaelic High School, whether that be Glasgow or elsewhere?
So I think you're giving me a run of questions.
Sorry, I just thought I'd give one. I thought it might be easier that way. Sorry.
Okay.
So I mean, so far in my time, all primary 7 pupils have put a placement request into Glasgow, and as described there previously, they have got into Glasgow either initially or through the churn, as I've described it. Historically, prior to that, I think there maybe now and again a parent might have decided for various reasons not to continue with Gaelic education, but I couldn't put a total percentage on it. But certainly in my almost 4 years here, it's 100% have put a placement request in and I've had it granted.
Okay, and my follow-up question to that is, do parents need to put placement requests in for other high schools such as Stirling Grammar or the other ones mentioned in the reports?
So I think I heard the question, but basically the answer is yes. So if an Inverclyde parent wishes their child to attend a new grammar school where there is a GME provision, such as we're proposing, yes, it would be a placement request to Argyll and Bute Council.
Okay, and just finally, I've got a comment based off that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from reading the report, it would appear that actually having a unit based within a school like Inverclyde Academy would actually increase access to Gaelic education for all children and young people. So rather than it being the children that went to Winhill Primary, which we're really thankful that we have that unit, it actually means that we might actually reach a wider range of pupils with Gaelic education. Is that correct from my reading?
Yes, through you, convener. So if we had a Gaelic teacher based at Inverclyde Academy, part of what they would be able to do is to support the teaching of Gaelic, which is already one of the languages other than English that children at Winhill are learning, out with the Gaelic provision, and that could certainly be developed in Inverclyde Academy.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, convener. Thanks, Michael, for answering my questions.
No problem, Natasha. We'll bring David in, then Robert.
Thank you, convener. My party's uncomfortable with this, and I've got several questions. I thought at the Members' Budget Working Group, the situation of Gaelic education and the transport to Glasgow had been resolved. That's my first question. Why have we got to now when the Members' Budget Working Group was considering this? Secondly, what is the cost in 23-24? Because we're presuming to start some people in 23-24 from the papers. Finally, there is the overall cost. At page 19, that Councillor Daisley referred to, the cost runs from 108,000 initially to £371,000 per year at the medium. This is a lot of money for our taxpayers. We are also, in terms of the cost per primary pupil and cost per secondary pupil, we're way ahead of other equal councils and way ahead of most councils in Scotland. So we're spending a lot of money at the moment. I don't think we can go on to spend this sort of money. So really my question is what happened with the Members' Budget Working Group and what would the cost be in 23-24? Thank you, Mike.
I'll bring Ruth in, but before she comes in, I think quite clearly they're two totally different things. With the Gaelic transport that we took the saving on at the Budget Member Working Group, this is totally different. This is a provision of Gaelic education. So we've still got that at Windhill Primary. We took the saving, but that is nothing to do with what we're discussing today. That is me as a convener saying that. I'll pass you on to the officers.
But the savings be taken off the cost.
No, the saving was taken on transport, purely on transport.
So at the moment, the council provides transport for pupils who attend Glasgow Gaelic School that was absorbed with this request. So that was the saving that was taken. So that will stop in the summer of 2023. This is the provision of Gaelic education within the Clyde Academy. We have to be very clear as well that the Gaelic Act has an expectation that if you attend primary school in Gaelic, that you will have a transition to secondary. We want to support that. When it became clear that Glasgow Gaelic School could no longer be a reliable source of our primaries on a transition to secondary, we have no option other than to explore the provision of secondary Gaelic in the Clyde. And it does seem by far the most sensible, the most cost effective, and actually something that will promote Gaelic within the Clyde. The cost will depend on how many people uptake the Gaelic provision. As always, it can vary. But what we would do, and this is what the paper is asking, is to establish a school and a catchment area for secondary provision. Now, as we did in Windhill, we looked at establishing through statutory consultation where the catchment area would reasonably be for primary provision, and that was the Rutland Clyde. So we would anticipate that we will do that for secondary provision as well. So this is a completely, as the convener said, this is a completely different set of circumstances. When we establish a catchment area, then it would be through our transport policy.
Is that clear, David?
I still don't think it's a good spend of money.
That's. But the officers have asked your question to your satisfaction. Can I bring Robert in?
Thanks, Convener. Say the raw film that was called Back to the Future. Tell this, I think this is. If people remember here, we had the Highlands Academy School here in Inverclyde. I think it opened in 1875. It ran until it closed about 4 or 5, well, maybe a bit longer than that now. So this would be a great testimony to the people who came from, the Gaels who came down from the Highlands and Islands and had their own school here in Inverclyde. And for us to establish that again, even if it is a base, it's our way of saying thank you for the heritage that we get here in Inverclyde, for the great work they've done in this community. So in that sense, I think it's a great idea. But also on a practical sense, I think this gives us a certainty of provision. We heard them at the Glasgow Gaelic School saying, sorry, we can't take you this year. A bit of here and on, they got in. Next year, it may be even a worse position where they say there's just no way we can have the pupil for Inverclyde. So we have to have something in place. And they always say grow your own is the best way. It's if you grow your own, that's the best way to do things. In my opinion, have our own base here in Inverclyde with a fantastic thing. And I really do appreciate that. But there's only one question I would like to ask, and that is, James already raised it. I think there's a lack of Gaelic teachers. Yeah. And I've even been told, and if I'm wrong, I'll soon be told, that even the head teacher in the one in Glasgow didn't talk Gaelic. She's learning in the Gaelic school. So there is going to be something of a shortage of teachers. And I'd be reassured, I know you can't, but it'd be great to reassure that if we do start the base, we have a teacher in place and we're not taking them down to Win Hill or over, it's already there.
Ruth, you want to comment on that?
So yes, and that is being highlighted as a risk, the difficulties in employing Gaelic teachers. But I can tell you what's been done nationally as well. There's national campaigns to look at people doing courses through I've forgotten the name of the place. Colmarostic. Elaine will keep me right. Solmarostic. And people can do it, so teachers can train to be Gaelic teachers. And we have a good reputation in Inverclyde as well, as Michael said. We've got Win Hill, we've got the Gaelic culture and community, and we hope one of the advantages of this will be that we'll be able to look at not just the language, but actually the Gaelic culture, the Gaelic songs, the stories that can become a Gaelic community. So we hope we're a good selling point. But I haven't got Michael's crystal ball either, and that will say that we can definitely put that, and teachers move on, So we do have to accept that that's a risk.
Yeah, I think we still have a wee free kirk here as well. So that's probably people here talk Gaelic, and who done that? You came from Skye, and she used to talk Gaelic quite a lot, which I never understood what to say to her. But anyway, I think you'll probably find a lot of people talk Gaelic here in Inverclyde.
It's after 2 o'clock. Robert, maybe she of the Free Kirk might be the new leader of the SNP by now. Can I bring Lynn in first, James, and then back to yourself, Lynn?
Yeah, I've just got 2 quick questions. So probably just to note, following on what Liz has said about, I think we had the issue before about bringing the parents with us, and it's really good to see that they're on board and actually positively contributing to that advisory group. So I've probably just got a question on that. Obviously, we know we're setting this up from scratch. So would that advisory group still continue in some sort of form, just so that we can sort of deal with those transition issues that maybe come up to make sure we've got the staff in there? And also, I'll just answer one or 2 questions. Do you envisage those children that are at Glasgow Gaelic School to be offered this provision as well, or are we just starting it from those primary 7s in August 24? That makes sense.
Michael.
Okay, so through you, Convener, the advisory group have agreed that we'll remain together. I think it's a very good, positive group, good relationships, and we would want to sort of remain a sort of governance over if this is agreed, taking this forward and being sure that as we progress, that Common Parliament sort of takes up at Inverclyde Academy in partnership with Win Hill. So absolutely, there's no doubt in our mind that we need to continue to meet and have oversight of this. The second question, so I just popped out, bring it back.
The ones that are currently at Glasgow.
Yes. So, I mean, that certainly with the primary 6 parent group that we met, that was a question we were asked, is there are siblings that are at Glasgow? And again, what we were at pains to say to them was, on the basis that we have a teacher and we can move forward, the challenge, the further challenge about that is that at the point of going to an advert, obviously we hope that we're getting a Gaelic speaker, but we don't know what subject they might bring, so it could be a science teacher that speaks Gaelic, a history teacher that speaks Gaelic, so it's difficult to know at this stage what other subject other than Gaelic could be being offering. If it's a historian, they would be able to teach social subjects more broadly across the BGE, but when it gets certification, we're holding to what they bring. So we'd be very clear if a parent wanted to talk to us about an older child coming into this provision, that we're not going to be able to match if they go into Inverclyde Academy, for example, if we don't have a Gaelic speaker teaching biology and the child's doing higher biology, we're not able to teach them in any other way than English. But certainly within the timetable and having capacity, we think there would be some capacity to pick that up.
Okay, Lynn. Can I bring James in now, Tommy?
Thanks again, Convener. I know you've not got a crystal ball and I'm not expecting you to give me a definitive answer here, but I'm thinking about the 12 pupils who are currently in Glasgow Gaelic School. And say, for example, all 12 of those decided through circumstance or just a decision that they made to come to our new provision in 23-24 if we had it set up. How likely is it that we would have a place for them in Inverclyde Academy? Just purely in terms of numbers.
Through you, convener, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, I'll just come back to you on that. I think we probably have space in year groups, depending which year group they're coming into. And as I've described, we would need to see exactly at what point they were coming in, whether it was coming in across the BGE or the senior phase. I'll come back to you, I'll get in touch to confirm numbers, but I'm pretty confident we would have a space for them in each of the 6 year groups, just whether or not we would have a teacher that was going to be able to meet their curriculum needs in terms of the options that they're choosing.
So my understanding that then, Michael, they would go into whatever year they were in, whether it's first, second, third or fourth year, but they wouldn't get immersive Gaelic in Inverclyde. They would need to then come out of their specific class to go into that class to broaden their Gaelic. They wouldn't be taught in the Gaelic language at Windhill in that immersive way. They will
Okay, they would be
in
taught,
the Glasgow Gaelic School, which will,
depending, so you can it's so difficult because it depends on what individuals decide to do, would like to do. We're open to a conversation at any time as we go through this process, and I'll be very clear about that with the parents I did meet. Certainly, you know, again, on the basis that we can find a teacher that they would be able to teach Gaelic as a subject, and again, some children, although they're at the Glasgow Gaelic School, they might not be taking Gaelic at a certificated level. They might be doing 5 hires in subjects other than Gaelic, but they're getting taught through Gaelic, if you know what I mean. So it's going to depend, and I think we have to be realistic that we might not be able to meet everyone's needs, but certainly that, you know, if they were coming in with wanting to do 5 hires, they would be treated like any other people in Inverclyde. And if Inverclyde Academy has that set of subjects, they would be taught in English, unless we've got a subject specialist Gaelic speaker. And we did talk about that there are children right across the west of Scotland who quite a large percentage of their secondary education at certificate level is taught through Eastboyle, through remote learning. So that could remain an offer if they wanted to continue to learn the subject through the medium of Gaelic. Obviously, that's not great if you're going for practical subjects, sciences, for example. So there's lots of different ways to achieve it, but it's just so difficult when we're not sure what people want to do. But we certainly would like the offer to be here.
Thank you.
okay, James.
Yeah.
Can I bring Tommy in? Tommy?
Thank you, convener. Michael, you've told us the configuration of the advisory group. So is it fair to say that there is a significant level of support within the Gaelic community for option 4? And if that is the case, is it fair to assume that there will be a reduction in the number of placement requests to the Glasgow Gaelic School, and parents will choose to send their children to Inverclyde Academy? Because we are, as Councillor Wilson says, going to be investing lots of time and money in this proposal. So if we've got that level of support, I would hope that we could see that coming through and more children attending Inverclyde Academy. What's your thoughts on that, please?
So, through you, convener, I think I've kind of maybe touched on this earlier. I'm not in a position to say to you today that every parent that's part of Come the Parent and has children learning Gaelic in Windhill is 100. I can't comment on that. What I can tell you is that the advisory group has had representation from Come the Parent, and they've taken the work from the advisory group back to Come the Parent and shared it with them. I mean, all I can say to you is that other than the 2 parents that we've worked with, I mean, there's been lots of questions coming back from those parents, certainly, and I know from the parents I met, there was still a sense that if their preference is for fully immersive education, then some parents may continue to put placement requests into Glasgow or make other decisions about how they would achieve a place at the Glasgow Gaelic School. So I couldn't say that I have any certainty about entirely what every parent is feeling about this, but the sense I have from the parents that I've worked with us is, and from the group I met, there's an understanding of the challenges that we face in establishing something like the Glasgow Gaelic School straight away, and that this is the best place to start that journey.
No, I accept you can't speak for every single parent, but based on your meetings, you get the feeling for what parents are thinking, what the board's thinking, and it's part of the report is based on that. and you're asking us to approve a significant spend. So, as I say, I don't expect to have anybody figures, but I would like a degree of comfort, for want of a better word, to say that yes, we would anticipate in future years we would see more support for local school rather than parents still moving to Glasgow. Good.
I can understand what you say, and one of my favourite films is The Field of Dreams, you know, and I hear somebody whisper in my ear that they will come. This is about a leap of faith. And it's a case of, is it the right thing to do?
Aye.
Are we going to be held hostage by the Glasgow school at some point in the future to say, no, we can't accept placement requests, and therefore people who want to pursue that Gaelic education, that Gaelic language, cannot do it anymore. So to me, it is a bit of a leap of faith. And to me, it's getting the provision there, believing that over time it will be a useful addition to Inverclyde's education services. You know, and that's where I come from on it. But again, I'm an elected member, same as everybody else. I'll let Ruth speak as a.
Can you ask it just before the I'm supportive of the recommendations.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for a wee bit of degree of comfort from the director just to move it forward. But thanks for your comment.
Maybe Ruth can.
So the paper is references the advisory group, and of course you've got to have members of Common Parent on the advisory group, and they won't represent every single parent. No parent council ever will, and people of course have the right to send their child to the local school or to put in a placement request to any other school, and they can do that throughout the child's education. What I would say is this is yet to go through statutory consultation. So when we go through statutory consultation, we will liaise and survey every parent involved. If there is no support for it, and there are no pupils who wish to come, which is I think what you're getting at, Councillor McVeigh, what I would say is that the council still needs to meet its obligation to be able to provide transition from primary to secondary, and that's where there was an issue when the placement requests were declined, because that was the first time it had happened. So actually the council does have to be able to provide a reliable transition, and you don't want to be in a position where every year you're wondering whether or not you're going to set up a Gaelic provision because there's no placement requests elsewhere. I think it's better to set it up, to build it, to start its reputation, to build the community, and as you say, build it and they will come. But I'm not going to give you an absolute definitive answer that all parents ought to do so, because I just can't do that.
Okay, Tommy. David, you want back in?
Yeah,
Yes,
David,
yes, sorry.
I should have said I wish to move an amendment that I cannot justify the expenditure of 371,000 to my taxpayers, and I move that we take no action.
Okay. Is there any other questions? No other questions? Well, obviously, I'm moving the recommendations in the report. We have an amendment from Councillor Wilson that no action be taken. Can we go to the vote?
Thank you. We just checked some other amendments. So we have the motion, Councillor Clougherty's motion to approve the recommendations able to works, and Councillor Wilson's amendments that the council takes no action. Can I ask each member to indicate whether you support the motion or the amendment, please? Councillor Clougherty.
Motion.
Councillor Daisley.
Motion.
Councillor McCormick.
Motion.
Thank you. Councillor Maguire. Councillor McVeigh.
Motion.
Councillor Moran.
Motion.
Councillor Quinn. Councillor Reynolds.
Motion.
Councillor Robertson.
Motion.
Councillor Wilson.
Amendment.
And Reverend Johnson.
Motion.
And that is 10 votes to 1, so the motion is granted. Thank you.
Can I thank everybody for their attendance today? I think that this is a step forward to Gaelic education within Inverclyde. So thank you very much for that. Good afternoon.
And I think we've got new leader.